Take a quick look around the room you're sitting in right now. It probably feels incredibly safe, right? Comfortable, maybe even a little bit mundane. But I want to contrast that cozy, predictable modern life with a truly terrifying 19th century secret. Because back then, the most fashionable homes shared a hidden danger sitting right in plain sight, literally plastered on their walls. Families were tucking their children into beds surrounded by absolutely stunning floral patterns that were, in reality, slowly turning their nurseries into lethal gas chambers. In this explainer, we're going to uncover exactly how this happened. We'll expose the grim reality of a society that literally chose vivid interior design over human survival. Let's get into it.
So ask yourself this: is your boring, totally safe home actually a biological miracle? I know it sounds like a massive exaggeration, but really think about your modern home for a second. The mere fact that you can just sit there perfectly safe, not actively fighting for your life against the elements or wild predators, that's astounding. Simply living safely today isn't just normal. It's actually the finish line of a brutal, centuries-long survival race. And to really understand how we got here, we've got to look back at exactly what we survived along the way.
All right, part 1, rewind to survival mode, the brutal race of history. To really get a grip on just how insane the story of our survival actually is, we need a little bit of perspective. So, we're heading rewind, tracing our ancestors' unbroken line of survival. We're zipping right past the 1990s and the sheer agonizing patience required to survive dial-up internet. Going further back, past the 18th century, where your highly fashionable powdered wig could literally burst into flames if you stood a little too close to a candle. We're going way past the Ice Age and the giant woolly mammoths, landing right next to your distant prehistoric ancestors. You know, their main worry for the day wasn't a low smartphone battery. They were mostly just squatting in the dirt, trying very hard not to become an afternoon snack for something with really big teeth. The only reason you and I are alive today is because an unbroken line of our ancestors somehow managed to survive the absolute worst, most dangerous situations imaginable.
Which brings us to section 2, the toxic green status symbol, fashion over human survival.
While our early ancestors spent all their energy just trying to stay alive and keeping the dangers on the outside, let's step into the muted, shadowy Victorian era. This was a time when our ancestors willfully brought terrible, toxic dangers directly into their own living rooms. Enter this glowing, totally unnatural color known as Scheele's green or Paris green. It was a hyper-saturated, brilliant emerald green pigment used everywhere in 19th century interior design. But, well, there was a catch. It was heavily laced with a massive dose of arsenic. Despite this, or maybe because no one quite grasped the danger, it became the absolute height of fashion, a massive status symbol for the elite who just wanted to show off their wealth and taste.
And make no mistake, this wasn't some niche underground product. This was the ultimate Victorian status symbol. Everyone who was anyone simply had to have it. They used it to create these vibrant, gorgeous floral patterns that were placed everywhere. And most horrifyingly, they put them in children's nurseries. It was incredibly highly sought after by the elite. But again, that secret ingredient that made the color pop so beautifully was a massive, lethal dose of arsenic. Victorian society essentially prioritized high-end interior design over their own lives. They were paying top dollar for this incredibly toxic luxury. That leads us to section 3. When walls started breathing, the lethal chemical reaction. Now, the mechanics of how this actually worked, straight out of a horror movie. Step 1. Victorian homes were often pretty damp and musty, and that dampness would just sit there, building up in the room. Step 2. That moisture then reacts directly with the toxic wallpaper paste that's holding up those gorgeous floral prints. And finally, step 3, the terrifying result. The walls would literally start breathing out lethal arsenic gas, pumping it straight into the enclosed home. The poison wasn't just sitting there inert on the paper. The very environment of the home was actively activating it. Section 4. The bedroom gas chamber. Silent poisoning in the nursery. The tragedy here is almost unthinkable. Families had absolutely no idea what was happening. They were blissfully unaware of the deadly chemistry experiment playing out on their walls as they tucked their children into these beds night after night. Whole families suddenly came down with horrific, mysterious illnesses. They were being slowly, silently poisoned in their sleep by their own fancy wallpaper. I mean, think about the sheer dark irony of this. People were essentially paying a premium for the absolute privilege of gassing their own families. And it was all in the name of a beautiful floral pattern. It was quite literally a mass poisoning hidden entirely behind high society aesthetics. And finally, Section 5, Winning the Survival Race, Reframing Modern Annoyances. Honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the stark contrast between the grim past and our lives today. On one side, you have the ultimate Victorian status symbol, beautiful arsenic walls that are secretly trying to end your life. On the other side, think about the ultimate modern annoyance, a smoke detector letting out a piercing, annoying chirp at 3 a.m. But what is that smoke detector actually doing? It's actively trying to save your life. It completely flips our perspective, doesn't it? It turns a grating modern annoyance into a celebrated symbol of your actual survival. So does a weak Wi-Fi signal or a chirping smoke detector really still feel like the worst thing in the world? When that single, high-pitched chirp goes off in the middle of the night, maybe, just maybe, we should view it as a comforting little sound. It's a loud, clear reminder that you have a modern gadget actively working to protect you, rather than your own walls secretly conspiring to poison you in your sleep.
I want you to consider this powerful takeaway. Your boring, predictable, and totally safe home is an absolute biological miracle. It is the finish line of a brutal, centuries-long survival race, and you won. The next time you get frustrated by a minor household inconvenience, just remember exactly what your ancestors endured, and sometimes actively purchased to get you here. Which leaves us with one final provocative thought. What incredibly fashionable must-have items are we blindly bringing into our homes today that people a century from now will look back on with pure horror?